Buenos días a todos. En primer lugar, me gustaría expresar que me hubiese encantado estar compartiendo este momento con todos vosotros de forma presencial. Agradezco a Antonio y al resto de participantes y a todas las compañeras y compañeros que asisten a este evento que me hayan dado la oportunidad de conectarme online. Muchas gracias. El Lab-APP, el Laboratorio de Arquitectura, Patrimonio y Paisaje, está diseñado como un marco para la colaboración internacional inter y transdisciplinar, como ha explicado muy bien el señor rector, en el campo específico de la arquitectura y su vinculación con el patrimonio artificial y natural. En este marco se darán la mano de forma sinérgica las actividades de investigación, docencia y transferencia. Está concebido como un ámbito donde la universidad, la administración y el tejido industrial puedan interactuar, impulsándose así no solo la producción académica, sino también la innovación de las empresas colaboradoras y el desarrollo económico y social de la sociedad andaluza dentro, lógicamente, de nuestras posibilidades y capacidades. Es sobre todo un marco para la colaboración internacional, especialmente para la creación de consorcios. Para el diseño y desarrollo de la hoja de ruta de este laboratorio, contamos con la inestimable ayuda del profesor Jan Rosvall de la Universidad de Göteborg, que ha sido nombrado presidente honorario de este laboratorio por el Consejo de Instituto e investigador honorífico por la Universidad de Sevilla, tal y como ha expresado el director del Instituto, Antonio Tejedor. Jan ha dedicado toda su vida a la ideación de metamodelos de colaboración internacional, transdisciplinar, multisectorial, en el campo de la conservación sostenible. Creó el primer instituto de conservación en Suecia, diseñando esta disciplina desde su misma raíz. Su pensamiento ha servido de inspiración para muchos de nosotros. Gracias a sus planteamientos se ha podido demostrar el potencial del patrimonio como motor económico, social y medioambiental y las oportunidades académicas que este ámbito podría tener para los investigadores universitarios si establecemos un marco adecuado para la colaboración. Este laboratorio, el Lab-APP, que hoy se inaugura formalmente, contribuirá a facilitar el logro de nuestras aspiraciones académicas y, lógicamente, está abierto a todos los investigadores de nuestra universidad, especialmente a las compañeras y compañeros que forman el Instituto Universitario de Arquitectura y Ciencia de la Construcción. Su participación y sus contribuciones serán fundamental para el éxito común futuro. Aprovecho desde aquí para animar a que todos los investigadores participen de forma activa en la construcción de lo que será parte del futuro del IUACC. Doy paso ahora al profesor Jan Rosvall. Muchas gracias a todos por vuestra amable atención. Muchas gracias. Please, Jan, go ahead when you want.
Gracias. Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me scuso per parlare in inglese, ma spagnola non è il mio primo lingua. Scuso molto. Io parlo un poco italiano. I want to direct myself to the well-respected peers of Universidad de Sevilla and the colleagues and to ladies and gentlemen here in the auditorium. I would like to direct myself especially to the Professor Vice-Rector Rosa Iglesias and to Director de la Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura de Sevilla, Valmania, Director del Instituto Universitario de Arquitectura y Ciencias de la Construcción, Antonio Tejedor Cabrero, che è un molto bene collega di me, e naturalmente al professore Antonio Garcia Martinez, who I know since long ago. In different ways we have collaborated. It started when he came to me in Gothenburg, and we have then continued very much. I want to tell you that I'm happy for this event, and I'm very grateful for being a member of this. It's a big honor to me and to my background at Chalmers Technical University and University of Gothenburg in Sweden to be invited to be the honorable director of the institution which I will attend now in the coming period. I would like to say 4 words to you. The first is my thanks and my gratitude for this very welcome opportunity to be invited so honorably to you in general as your director, but also to be member of this meeting today. And I would like to say hello, all ladies and gentlemen in the assembly hall also, and all students. I met some of you before, I believe. And the second I would like to say is that I find this a very good opportunity to form our collective future in the coming period, which is needed to be sustainable conservation if it should survive at all. This is an important responsibility for us together, and we cannot do it one by one, university by university. It might be in together, very cross-disciplinary, very interrelated in all possible ways. And then I would like to say that this is a very good opening for the coming cooperation to join together in various parties all around internationally, because no one can do that by themselves. Thank you so much. This was my introductory word, and I hope I have expressed my gratitude and my honor and my happiness for being here together with you. I know Antonio very well since long ago, and some others I also learned to know, and I will continue to do that if that will be possible. We have spoken about that, Antonio and I, much, and we will try to find a way. Thank you so much. Now I'm ready with my thanks and my introductory, and I will be helped by Antonio and Herman to present my PowerPoints, which I have presented earlier, if that is possible. I have 10 slides, more or less, and they are contained in the title of this presentation today, called Towards Sustainable Conservation with the Sevilla Model. It's my proposal. Nobody told me, but I think it's the logic to call this the Sevilla Model. We have seen other models, but now it will be the Sevilla Model for future, for a totally integrated, interrelated, international model for conservation of all our heritage, of all our society, of all our planning, of everything which is concerned in the term of conservation. And I'll go through relatively roughly what is conservation and what is integrated conservation. So this begins with a map here. The first map is about the different levels of conservation. On top level, you can see that we have conservation of material resources and recycling. That's the practical, technical level of it, available everywhere. The national level is the natural environment. We need to find a way to keep the nature as a basis for conservation of material resources. And in turn, this goes over to so-called ordinary landscapes. Ordinary landscapes is a scientific concept defined by cultural geographers, and it means whatever we can see around ourselves. And they contain a big mass of things, which is society and nature, and we call that built environment. And how to keep up to how to conserve built environment is one of the biggest jobs we have for the future to keep society alive. And built environment contains cities, conurbations, villages, and whatsoever, and their content of buildings and other spatial structures. Could be industry, could be streetscapes, could be transport system, and whatsoever. And inside all these components, you will find the artifacts. Artifacts are the implements, all the objects which we keep in your hand. Now, there are three domains of all these I've spoken about so far. The top level here is natural and biological domain, which is given by nature itself. And below that comes the social domain. That's how mankind is organizing the life wherever man is available. And on the bottom level here, for the most important, is the cultural and historical domain. And that's what we are directed to in this area where we speak today. Cultural and historical domain, that is all man-made. and all man shape. And it's some of this is material and some is not material. If it's not material, we call it intangible. Intangible is a very important concept here. It means all the values connected to the material structures. Please go ahead. Now, this diagram you could study by yourself later on. It's what many students in conservation are concerned with, all these levels of happenings to all kinds of objects. And I will discuss, not today, but later on, when I come back to Sevilla, the deterioration factors we see in the small diagram, handwritten by myself to the left, with depending on physical factors and of chemical factors and biological factors. But what is often forgotten when we speak about science is the anthropogenic factors, which are the most important, because there is no chemistry, there is no physics, there's no biology, except if man is organizing it all the time. And we have to integrate them in together. Integrated conservation, where the social and technical factors go together. That is our job. Thank you. And now we can continue, please. Here are some diagrams which I showed very rapidly. You can study them by yourself. It's about the cycle link, about population, poverty, and pollution. And they are interrelated. And there is no pollution without population, and there is no poverty without population. But all these go together, and we have to serve them all in a good way. Well, you can look on this historically, and then you can see that the pollution has been all since antiquity in the Roman period, and it was so, of course, in Spain, when Spain was a Roman region, but it has grown over the hundreds and thousands of years. And you can see on the top level diagram here, it's long-term trends in London air pollution from 1700, when it was beginning to be detected in archives, up to now. And then we have the details of it about the sulfur dioxide, which we have lots of today in modern industrial world, and we have smoke, which we also have lots of still. And I can tell you that it starts in 1955, and I was in London on a trip together with my parents to London in 1951, and you couldn't see the streets because it was so smoky. Everything was dirt. It was terrible. And therefore, they started a new environmental issue in the British governmental system, which was overtaken by countries like Sweden and Italy. And Italy, it was the same when I turned up in Roma, in 1964 as a young student. There is the main street in center of Rome, is the Corso, Via del Corso. And I remember that you couldn't see, I couldn't see from one side of this Corso to the other. It was totally black. So we have lots to do still. Now we can continue, please. So this is about what happens to when the deterioration starts up to act on material issues. This is material, it's not intangible, it's material. And then we have values according to the diagram here. In the midst, we have the nominal value, it's where it starts, and then it rapidly deteriorates. And we can do repairing acts on it to keep it alive. That's what we call maintenance and repair. And all this period here is called the critical phase. And if we can learn how to keep the critical phase as short as possible, then we would keep the heritage and the buildings and the cities the longer. Now, this diagram takes a long time to go through, but all of it is contained in the concept of conservation. Conservation of cultural heritage and conservation of nature is in principle the same principle. Okay, we can go further, thank you. These values, which I indicated, are of 4 or 5 types. We have use values which often are forgotten. It's very basic daily things. And then we have economic values with the economic disciplines are using how to understand how economic value deteriorates. And then besides this, we have emotional values. Emotional values are nominal values. You cannot count them. And we have knowledge values. It's the same as emotional values. You cannot count in knowledge values, but you have to define them. And besides this, ethics and systems values are important factors to understand what happens to values. Thank you. You will go over this, not today. Not this, thank you. Next one. Yeah, here is, now I come to what Antonio said I would speak about. Do look on the right side, look in the middle. Here is a huge diagram, and I will condense my speaking very easily to it. It's based on my learnings from a colleague from California, John P. Bengage, who developed the scientific model for meta-level analysis of whatsoever exists in mankind. And we need then to have a meta-level, the top level, and it is based on inquiry systems that you can state that here is the meta-level. And what is good and what is bad are typical questions. And then we go down into the object level, that is in the inquiry system, that is what scientists do in all kinds of disciplines. And then the question would be, is this a particular action ethical or not? And on the basic system, you have the intervention level, that is how to do, that's where conservators and architects and historians are acting in society based on this meta-level system. Well, this is hugely complex, I can promise you, and you can see that already. So I will not stop there, just tell you that that exists, and if we will develop the Sevilla model into reality and have it accepted in other countries, then we must make a meta-level analysis of all these factors. Let us go further, please. Here comes the definition of what is conservation. Conservation may be defined as the dynamic management of change in order to reduce the rate of decay. The cultural, the scientific, and the natural heritage must be conserved as, this is very important, as authentic documents. And interventions should be limited to actions strictly necessary to ensure that techniques and materials used should not impede future treatment or examination. And there is often happening lots of problems on this field because they impede the modern methods where we intervene in historical materials. Now, all this in together, it requires comprehensive socio-economic, legal, and cultural planning integrated at all levels. Well, this is a huge task. This definition comes from our friend Sir Bernard Thielen, and he was a great friend. He often came to my institute in Gothenburg and lectured for my students and learned them how to understand what is conservation. And that is what I want to transmit further to you. Now we can go further if you can change, because before making prevention, you need to prevent things. And here is the definition of what is preventive conservation. Preventive conservation is the prevention of material deterioration in artifacts. It's about materials. This is not about intangible dimensions. It is achieved by reduction of the incidence and intensity of agents of deterioration reaching an artifact, or by reduction of the vulnerability of the artifact to those agents. Well, this is very material science oriented, as is different from the integrated conservation, which is an anthropogenic, anthropological, social process. So these are two working groups together. Now, next one, please. Here is an example how you could act on a historical implement. This is an old building. It is a diagram of the cathedral in Cologne in Germany, and it's made up of the dome architect Wolf, who made it in 1972. And he has detected all kinds of stones used for constructing this building from the beginning. And of course, these materials have very different characteristics, and there are deteriorating in different ways, in different periods. So you need to know all this in order to understand how you could keep this building alive preventively, and especially if there is actual conservation in repair work. Thank you. Well, we jumped over this one. Please. Next. Yeah. Here are the basic ethical dimensions of conservation. The first one, the top, number A, is to have respect for the original. And conservation is a demand which requires, for example, minimum intervention. That's opposite to modern industrial processes, which are maximum intervention. And to use original material, that is also very different from modern principles, because modern materials are often inserted instead of looking for original materials. Now think of that cathedral in Cologne to understand what I mean here. And I don't go into the details, number A, B, C, D, and so on. But turn over to number B. What is also required is what we need, long period of service life. This is opposite to the modern industrial principle, where everything should be rapidly and not being forever. But in conservation, everything is forever, more or less, in some way. Thank you. Do I have one more? Yes. Now, this is the last one. Is what we would do in our work together. It's the conservation strategy. The Sevilla conservation strategy would be based first on reduction of negative factors, if you have heard what I've lectured on up to now. To reduce all negative factors is to get away with air pollution, lack of interventions, inappropriate use, and so on. And to have reliable observations continuously in diagrams. Number two is the general prevention, how to prevent generally, and then you need to have models for integrated conservation planning. Do we have that? Yes or no? We will hear on the lecture later on by Professor Della Torre from Milano, who has really worked on this, how to plan for conservation. That's a basic requirement. Number three is to establish qualified conservation methods. That's what all conservators love to speak about, and that is needed, but that's not the first. The first is to reduce negative factors and then to have a general prevention. Then we can begin to start research on science for qualified conservation methods. And then you need standards, and you need new materials, you need a new technology, and complex systems. And that is not available now in the industry or on the market. So that must be produced as a new object of research. Finally, all this requires in together a cooperative system where we all work together between different disciplines, between different universities, between different countries, between different industries, between different market sectors. And this is extremely multidisciplinary. So for a scientist, this is a problematic thing because it's not easy to find such standards. They don't exist, but that's what we need to develop. So if you look on the right side here, then you can see that what we would like to see is that conservation should be future-oriented. That is opposite to what many people believe, that conservation is about history. Well, history is the content of it, but it's not the future. The future should be conservation-based. And then it must be comparable with the main factors in society, which is health and peace and welfare and environment. Without these factors, there is no society. If we can combine all these together and use conservation as a means for it, then we can start a sustainable future for our common world, as was the big book coming in 1973, if you heard about it, our future, our common future. And I would like to thank you for listening to me. I hope I have not disturbed you too much. Thank you, goodbye.